Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective. Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Peter Fenger, and today I'm joined by Dr. Traci Sweet and Emilee Beck. Traci is the co-founder and COO of Holon Health. With over 30 years of experience pioneering innovative solutions on behavioral health care and substance use treatment, she's been instrumental in breaking down barriers of care and developing integrative models that improve engagement and long-term solutions. Emilee is an addictive recovery coach at Holon Health, dedicated to supporting individuals through the challenges of substance use recovery. With expertise in recovery coaching and counseling, she helps clients build healthier, more fulfilling lives. In today's Clinicians Series, we're thrilled to welcome Traci and Emilee back, where we'll explore the critical role of recovery coaches, how they build trust, navigate relapse, and measure success, and how Holon Health's approach fosters empowerment, community, and long-term healing. Emilee, Traci, welcome to our show.
Thanks, Peter.
Well, I'm very excited to have you here. Let me just say this real quick. Folks, we had a prior show with Traci that was just awesome. Today, we get to go into a little bit deeper for our Clinicians Series and talking about Holon Health's program, as I mentioned. But I would so encourage you to go back and listen to our previous show. We cover some really great things. But for today, we'll be giving our listeners an opportunity to learn more about your substance use program and the unique relationship of your coaches as they help guide folks toward recovery. So I want to start, Emilee. What inspired you to join the Holon Health team, and what brought you to working with this population as an addiction recovery coach?
So I was drawn to Holon Health specifically and their team because of their holistic approach. They have the person-centered approach to healing, and that's very different from previous work that I've done, which, my values align with. I think recovery is much more than just breaking free from addiction. It's about rebuilding a life and rediscovering purpose. Holon Health's missions alone align with my beliefs in treating the whole person and not just the symptoms of addiction. My journey into this work started with my own personal addiction and recovery experiences. Seeing firsthand and experiencing it, the road to recovery can be challenging. So I felt called to be a source of guidance and support for others walking the same path.
Yeah, and I so appreciate your willingness to really meet folks. I know it sometimes takes one to know one, so really having a person with lived experience to really engage with folks probably creates a really good sense of trust and understanding there.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think meeting with people is important. Understanding where they are is even more important. So just empowering others to take ownership of their recovery, but also help them build meaningful change is a huge part of it.
Yeah, and I know you guys are helping folks build meaningful change. Traci, I want to ask you, I know that Holon Health has a unique approach to substance use treatment. Can you walk our listeners through how recovery coaches differ from maybe traditional therapists or counselors and how that really complements other forms of treatment?
Yeah, I say it a lot, and Emilee's probably heard me say it 1,000 times. Our recovery coaches are invaluable. They are the links that keep the chain together, and they are the driving force of creating the village around our clients. The clinicians, the providers, the nurse practitioners, our therapists have very limited time engagement with our clients, whether it's an hour here or 30 minutes there. Emilee, the rest of the peer recovery specialists spend a lot of time and really reinforce all of the messages that are delivered by the therapists, that are delivered by case management, by their providers, whether medical or mental health. They reinforce the rules. They reinforce engagement. They help with the social determinant of health issues and resources and removing obstacles and barriers to engagement. They're tremendous problem solvers. I could go on and on. As I've said to you previously, Emilee was our first peer recovery specialist. She set the bar exceptionally high for what we were looking for. She understands the model that I really felt compelled to build with Holon Health. And as such, she's really been an integral part, and she's done well training and helping the others who have come after her to grow and advance too.
Yeah, well, I know you have done a wonderful job in really establishing the program and creating that foundation. But it really sounds like the coaches are sort of that extra sauce to make it all sort of flow better. Emilee, you sort of mentioned meeting folks where they're at. And it sounds like the coaching process gives them the sort of the flexibility to help folks navigate some of those challenges that really help them keep on that program.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm curious about welcoming folks into this recovery program. I know it can be a very crucial step. So I want to ask you, Emilee, how do you approach that first interaction, sort of help build trust and create a sense of safety for your clients?
The first interaction I feel is probably the most important. It sets the foundation for the person's entire recovery journey, really. I think my approach is more centered on empathy and non-judgment, genuine connection, for sure. When I do meet a new client, I start by creating a space where they can see and feel heard and seen without pressure or any expectations right out of the gate. A big part of it is letting them share at their own pace. I listen actively, reinforce their experiences, their fears, and their hopes. Everything is valid, and trust is built through, I think, authenticity and consistency.
Sure.
So I also make sure to be honest and transparent and approach it that way from the very beginning.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, look, we have such a great foundation of the program itself, but being able to get folks to really connect can help the engagement of that process. It can be difficult for us to have a sort of a checklist of stuff that we have to go through. When we are able to make a little bit more of an authentic connection, we can sort of remove a lot of those barriers and start to really get to some of the sources. I mean, I think at the end, you guys are so focused on more of the recovery process than, the material that you have to go through steps 1, 2, 3 probably becomes secondary.
Absolutely. And something that Traci has actually said that I wholeheartedly agree with is the resistance oftentimes is a natural part of the recovery process.
Yeah.
So what we do is rather than pushing against it, we explore with them, try to work through any fears or doubts that come up and support them so we can work on it together.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, even just being aware that that's sort of a natural human reaction, right? Folks have to go through things. There's going to be a push. And you tell me I have to stay confined inside of my box. Of course, I'm going to try and push out. So really coming into that with sort of that mindset that there's going to be resistance, I think being compassionate and trying to explore that a little bit more kind of gets them to be a little bit more pliable to work with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm curious, Traci, as you sort of wrote the program itself, I believe that there is sort of maybe an idealistic personality type or some characteristics that make somebody more successful to doing this type of program. Are there any characteristics or readiness indicators that you look for when guiding folks into the recovery program that help them set up for success?
It's funny. I think for years we've looked at sort of that wheel of change, that trans theoretical model of change as,
Mhm.
are they in ambivalence? Are they pre-contemplative? I look at things through a very different lens. And to Emilee's point about resistance, I don't feel like we're on a wheel to change. I feel like change occurs over time,
Mhm.
and resistance does not mean there's no change. So for our clients that come into the program, they have been in some ways beaten down. They've been most likely part of the criminal justice system in one way or the other. They've been shamed and judged. And change doesn't happen when we beat people up. change happens when we motivate them and show them that there's something better that they have to strive for. So I don't know that there's an ideal person that comes in, but for us, it's our job to really say, what do you want your life to look like? And we look at things not from a cognitive behavioral perspective, not from adverse childhood events, not from past trauma, but a very today focused with a future orientation.
Mhm.
So you may come in as a client and say, I don't really want to do this. I don't feel comfortable with providers. Maybe I feel more comfortable with a peer recovery because they've been there, done that. But I look at doctors and therapists and say, no, no, no. But the focus really needs to be on you and where are you at today? And I don't necessarily care if you're ambivalent or you're pre-contemplative. We're going to roll with it. And I'm going to ask you what you want your life to look like.
Mhm.
That is irrelevant to where we are in terms of change. You could care less. But as soon as I say, what do you want tomorrow? Or if you woke up tomorrow and your life was different, you're going to engage. There's excitement there. There's an automatic level of dopamine that happens when you hear that, when you get into that dream phase, and you can tell me what you want your life to look like going forward. That is ultimately where we want to take people, and it's their own journey. So their autonomous journey. I'm not inflicting my beliefs and my perspective on what I think you should have in your life, but where do you want to go? And then our goal to keep you engaged is how are we going to help you get there? What do the steps look like? And what's the progress look like over time that will help you reach that goal? And if we can do that, if we can keep you engaged by celebrating those small wins and those successes, and even celebrating that crap happens sometimes, we tend to keep people engaged. That's the ideal client. But when they walk in the door, none of them, and I think Emilee will agree, none of them are ideal. We have to sort of get them on that path to one, trusting us, two, seeing that we're different, and three, allowing us to guide them on the journey forward versus reverse.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and having that sort of goal focused, future focused perspective really does eliminate, some of the baggage that we carry. Having a focus on today, and there's a lot of research around interventions and really getting folks in that moment to really think about what they can do, trying to look at their goals from their perspective and really trying to help them craft a plan and steps that they can sort of achieve that future. There's a lot of success and people are coming away feeling empowered. That perspective can be totally life-changing from some of the relationships that they've had in the past. And a lot of folks that may have had past traumas or even just dealing with depression are sort of focused on a past perspective, right? Being able to sort of change that into a future perspective with a brighter outlook could keep people engaged. And it sounds like you guys are finding some success.
I think so.
Yeah. I want to ask, as people are going through the program and you're sort of introducing them to sort of this goal-focused future, what sort of changes do you start to notice? And how do you help highlight some of those shifts with your clients?
It's the small victories that I think are the most important. So it can be something as simple as I am not working right now. I need help finding a job. We're going to make that our goal. We're going to work on it together and I'm going to provide you some resources so we can figure it out. We meet pretty regularly typically, but if somebody needs a little bit more support to get to a goal that they want to achieve, then we're going to check in far more frequently, to make sure that goal's accomplished. Challenges with telehealth is, I'm not available in person to monitor every step of the way, but when people create a goal for themselves, once they know that we're here to help them, they're pretty much on point with everything. They want to attend, they want to engage, and they want to work with us, not against us, to try to find these small victories for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're really helping them create some motivation. You also sort of mentioned this contact point of telehealth and even just being flexible enough within, the program that you guys written that if you feel like there has to be additional check-ins along the way, you're sort of working that into the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the benefits of telehealth. We're flexible.
Mhm.
It's a lot more convenient for some people who may be in rural areas who may have a difficult time with no transportation. In reality, this is a population that we deal with, and we want to be able to connect with them wherever they're at, whenever they need, and foster that flexibility.
Yeah, I love it. So I know, relapse is part of this recovery journey. I want to ask you, Emilee, as you sort of interact with your clients, how do you help clients navigate relapse in a way that fosters growth instead of shame or discouragement?
Yeah, relapse is tough. It is a tough but natural process and part of the recovery. And how we respond, I think, makes all the difference for people. When a client experiences a relapse, we focus more on approaching the situation with, again, compassion, not judgment. The very first words out of my mouth are, I've been there. I understand. Please know there is no judgment on my end. The last thing I want is for someone to feel like they've failed because they haven't. I frame it as an opportunity for learning and growth. And we kind of dissect it together, make sure that they feel emotionally supported and safe. I want to validate what they're feeling, what they went through. Also, reminding them that this moment of relapse doesn't define or erase their progress. I think we kind of explore what led to the relapse, maybe some stressors, triggers, or unmet needs in the moment, but my goal is to develop coping strategies so that we're shifting the focus from shame to self-awareness, and we can develop new tools and strategies to strengthen their recovery moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I really at the heart of this, you're helping folks craft resiliency skills.
Absolutely.
Even just that perspective of like, hey, you know what, we might have not gotten this, but what are some ways that we can sort of walk away with learning a little bit more about ourselves? I imagine as you sort of interact with these folks and you're sort of going through the peaks and valleys, that folks are starting to do some of these resiliency skills themselves. And you find that maybe the relapse isn't quite as hard and they sort of get back on track. Is that sort of your experience?
Yes, I think oftentimes people are able to tell me it was a relapse. It wasn't, full blown back into my addiction, out on the streets using. It was something that happened, a lapse, and I don't want it to happen again.
Mhm.
I hear that more often than I do, I'm in my addiction. I wasn't able to come out. So
Yeah.
I also remind clients that everybody's recovery journey is different and it's not about perfection, it's about resilience.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Are you preparing for a licensure exam in psychology, social work, marriage and family therapy, counseling, or behavioral analysis? AATBS is here to help. We have been supporting behavioral and mental health students to prepare for their licensure exams for more than 45 years, working with over 1 million students to succeed on test day and move on to the next step in their career. With products ranging from comprehensive courses to quiz banks and delivered live online, self-study online, and in print, AATBS has test prep solutions that meet every student's needs and learning styles. Visit us today at aatbs.com. That's aatbs.com and use promo code BHT15 to save 15% off your next purchase.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I can imagine it's just so empowering to really hear your clients walk away with some of these skills. But Traci, I know that traditional programs have structured milestones to measure progress, but your approach is a little bit more future focused. And I want to ask, as you sort of guide folks through this recovery journey, how are you helping clients really define and track their own success?
It's funny, and just to speak to resilience, as I mentioned in the traditional model of change, and we're talking about the wheel, and I focus kind of on a linear progress or a linear path for our clients. Over the journey of that linear path to change, we're trying to increase strength, competency, and resilience. Those are three characteristics. Emily's giggling because she's heard me say those three things 150 times. Those are the three factors that are really meaningful. And evoke that sense of empowerment and autonomy and self-change. So we watch those increase over the course of change. And I think that's critical. In terms of just data points and traditional kind of performance indicators of where we are, we're looking at, days sober. We're looking at clean drug screens. We are looking at continued engagement. Are they showing up for their appointments? Are they engaging with our digital therapeutic app? We look at their reflections and their homework assignments and the quality of those assignments to really, one, be able to tell us their progress, but also predict more of the potential for relapse as well.
Sure.
Starting
Yeah.
to look at that in a more acute lens so that we have some idea of this person may be at increased risk. And then we want to increase people like Emilee and their engagement. So we're doing some predictive modeling around that. There are a number of data points, and we have to hold ourselves accountable to that, of course. But the reality is the just the stories. I mean, and they're anecdotal, they're not data driven, but we share stories with each other every day of things that we hear from clients. This nurse practitioner helped me. If it wasn't for the app, I wouldn't be here. Thank you guys for spending the extra time with me. It's just we're getting more and more positive feedback, and that's my data. I'm a scientist at heart and a researcher, and I do have to look at numbers, even though I don't like math. But for me, it's those feel good moments. I've said this for 30 years. The job that we do can be thankless, and we have to really, as clinicians, cling to those moments of joy and grace. And I love my work here. I love being part of Holon because I have a lot of those. And that's really wonderful. And when you can take someone who is so resistant and change that into resilience, strength, and competency, that's success for me.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it sounds like some of the skills that you're helping folks craft is self-awareness, even just in the stories of success that you're sharing, is folks saying, hey, I recognize that this is really helping me in ways that other recovery programs have not worked for me. So being able to really cultivate that awareness and the stories that you're hearing, it's real positive change, and it makes it possible for other folks to really engage in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's nice to hear you helped me do this, but the bane of that, the backbone of this is I did it.
Yes.
You helped me do it.
Mhm.
You didn't force me to do it. You didn't expect me to do it because however you want to proceed on this journey is up to you. My expectations are far less important. What's important to you? So that ability to say, I succeeded is huge.
Yeah, there is a degree of accountability to all of this, right? Not only are you helping folks sort of organize and help them succeed, but you're also putting them first, right? You have their lens and sort of their best interests at heart of all of this. Emilee, I want to ask you, since there's a balance between accountability and compassion in sort of doing recovery coaching, I want to ask how you're ensuring clients are really feeling both supported and empowered in that process. Like, what are some of the ways that you're supporting and engaging them?
I think the biggest part of keeping them engaged, but also offering support is listening, just listening
Yeah.
to what they need. Sometimes people just want to talk about what's going on without somebody necessarily trying to fix it or give them an answer. Sometimes they just want somebody to listen, and there's a lot of times where I do just that. We just talk and I listen, and by the end of it, they're like, wow, I feel so much better. Thank you so much. And I'm like, you did that all, we sorted it out together, and I'm here to support you, but you did that all.
Yeah, yeah, and I can imagine for folks really going through, coming through criminal justice system or having to go through other substance use recovery programs, having just a voice to really listen and engage and sort of work through. Again, I think all of that sort of build trust, and also with you framing it and sort of them feeling empowered to do things themselves, them working toward goals. I can imagine how that really fosters a lot of trust and even just a lot of self-compassion to themselves and competency in being able to do the program themselves.
Absolutely. I think that also goes back to the resilience and how our role isn't to fix it all at once, but to walk alongside the clients as they navigate those complexities.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to ask, sort of as you're fostering these really, corrective emotional relationships in these people's lives, I want to ask, how do you involve families and friends or communities in that process? Or maybe even help them cultivate skills for them to reach or create those support systems themselves. Maybe Traci, you can help us color in, how does your program involve families and friends and communities in the recovery process?
Yeah, I mean, we want to help people identify those sources of support and positive influence that are going to help them engage in adaptive and pro-social behaviors, of course. And, our goal being telehealth is we want people to stay in their communities. So very important that they can identify those sources quickly. I can take someone and put them in a detox program and help them get sober. But when they go back into the real world, those triggers, those places, those people, places, and things still exist. I've done nothing to
Yeah.
affect them, which some people come out of a detox and they're sober, but are they truly in recovery?
Mm.
I don't know. So important that we're keeping people in their communities. We're showing them how to exist in that community, which has been a challenge to date. And, we're asking them about the people in their lives. Again, there's no assumption that there are parents who are supportive. There's no assumption that they have a spouse or a significant other who isn't using or is using. We know nothing at this point. So, our goal is really just to learn more about the story and who are those sources of support. And I know that we ask that in our regular engagements, in our didactic conversations with them, but the Holon Vibe app also includes that area of support. It asks you to identify, and they write it down, who's in your tribe, who are the people that you can go to, and what are their phone numbers. And we put that all in their app so that when they are at risk or when they do feel triggered, they can go right back to that assignment and say, I need to call so and so because I know this person is in my tribe. Similarly, we ask them to say, what are the relationships that are not serving you? And how do we help you get beyond them and say to those people, I'm sorry, I can't have you as part of my life right now because it does not serve my purpose, which is recovery, reunification with my children, et cetera, whatever the goals are. So it's person centered, as Emilee said, to start off this discussion. And it's really centered around, who are the people that we want to have help you stay accountable to yourself, and who are the people that aren't serving you. And let's focus on removal and continued engagement with the good ones.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good because, sometimes we need that healthy other in order to sort of help us see the more positive relationships and connections in our lives. I can imagine that folks, when they're able to identify maybe some of the destructive cycles or destructive relationships, they can see a more positive life for themselves, in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We see that in their reflection questions when they do their homework. We ask the questions about those relationships that aren't serving you, or they have to write an apology letter to someone. The light bulb goes off. It's just kind of this amazing process. And, we know social media, you tend to be more forthcoming as you're typing into your phone or on a computer, thinking there's not a person behind that. So we learn a lot by asking people those difficult questions when they're reflective about it. It's why we call them reflection questions. And the clinicians being able to see those is meaningful, that we can re-engage them and say, I noticed on your last reflection, you talked about so-and-so and a struggle that you've had in that relationship. And it opens the door. And it opens the door for the peer recovery specialist to have those conversations too.
Yeah, that's an intervention right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Emily, as we sort of talk about, relationships and engagements, I know that not all clients have a great outcome. And sometimes folks do, end up in relapse or they drop out of the program. And it can be kind of emotional as you establish relationships and trust and honesty with some of these clients. I want to ask, from the perspective as a recovery coach, how do you maybe become mindful of your own influence and maybe limits to engagement to some of the clients that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think that at first I felt like I needed to help and save everyone. That's just the kind of person I am. And I think it's very difficult when either you lose a client, which has happened, or somebody isn't there in their recovery. But I kind of step back and remember what I was like in that moment. I have my own personal history of addiction and my recovery journey. And I think there's some times where there is not much you can do. And that's okay. At the end of the day, if I can help at least one person that day, then that's all the difference to me. And I do try to inform my clients like, I'm here regardless of what you're going through. I'm also here if you're having a great day and you just want to chat. I'm versatile and I try to make myself known as a support for them, but ultimately I can only do so much if I'm reaching out my hand and they don't take it. It
Yeah.
can be hard. It can be hard to set those boundaries, but that's a big part of the recovery coach role, I believe. I think
Yeah.
it's really important to have your own boundaries and understand that there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. You do have to establish boundaries within that relationship. But I do want to ask you, Emily, beyond maybe those misconnections, there are also really good connections and people that you've helped foster through real recovery. So I want to ask you, like, what are some of the stories of success of folks coming through and working with you? I want to hear like what are some of the stories that really give you passion for coming into work each day?
Yeah, I have worked with people in different aspects. So I've done groups before where I facilitated groups. I've done case management. I've done recovery coaches, and
Mhm.
I think everybody's story is unique, but there is, certain people that kind of stick with you. And, for example, I have somebody who is in the Holon Health program that I worked with previously in my other role, and when we connected, he was open and honest. I had a relapse. I didn't do so well after I left treatment. But I'm here now and I'm doing better, and he's been 2 years clean as of last month. So, it's different people go through different things and there's a lot of ups and downs. But I think the success stories are if you can, maintain your sobriety for maybe even one more day, one more week, one more month, that's a victory and that's a success, So I like
Yeah.
to just let people know, we want to keep it achievable, but we also, want to shoot big. I mean, recovery is a big deal and that should be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they sound like fantastic stories as well. I'm sure you guys are doing a wonderful job of being able to share some of those stories that really give hope to, other clients that are sort of going through that process. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it comes back to everybody's journey is different, but, from being in treatment to dealing with probation or parole, from dealing to people, involved with maybe DCS who lost their kids and then coming to me and saying, like, hey, we're working on reunification. I have scheduled visits now. Those are amazing things to hear. And that's a big part of why I do what I do.
You're really helping people rebuild their lives in really healthy ways.
To Emily's point, I think, something that's really important for people that are being peer recovery specialists, have become certified like Emilee, or looking into that, there's this factor of appropriate self disclosure. And that's really critical. We can walk a path with them and share our experience in recovery as peer recovery coaches, that balance of how much do we share to maintain a therapeutic relationship, and then how much makes the relationship more about us and less about our clients. And Emilee and the rest of the team at Holon, the rest of the peer recovery specialists at Holon are particularly good at that, knowing when it's appropriate to self-disclose. It's a hard and fine line to walk as someone who is also in recovery and has their own story in their journey. But if you're skilled and you're a really good peer recovery specialist, that's something that you work on and you hone regularly for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can imagine that that's a very artful skill, right? To be able to recognize when the focus is getting pulled away from your clients and toward your own stories, right?
Yes, I agree with that. I think the balance of determining how much you can share. Again, there's situations where I meet with people and, no, I barely get a couple words in, which is great because they feel comfortable and they're sharing. And, there's other times where people might be a little bit hesitant. And that's where I offer, hey, I'm in recovery as well. Whatever bit of information with that little bit of self-disclosure to make them comfortable, but always keep in the back of my mind, is this something I'm saying for me, or is this something I'm saying for the other person and my client?
Yeah. No, and I love the extra detail that you're adding is that when you don't talk and the client is maybe taking control of the conversation, that's evidence of them really in this recovery process, right? That's evidence of trust and honesty that they're sharing with you. So I love that perspective and that awareness from yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to ask both of you, for anyone that might be listening today who is struggling with addiction or somebody that might be supporting a loved one that's currently in recovery, if you could leave a message for them right now, what you might share. I'll start with you, Traci.
I would simply say whether
Mm.
you're in recovery or starting to be decided to become sober, or you have a loved one, it can seem insurmountable. And one day, 1 minute at a time really does apply. Because if you do get too ahead of yourself, the goals will become overwhelming and that mountain will get very high. So AA says one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. And we would love to help support, taking those small steps, incremental steps. We're pretty good at recognizing those areas of success and celebrating them. So keep everything in check. And you have more strength than you know. And if you don't, resilience, strength, and competency is something that we do pretty well.
How about you, Emilee?
I always say this, and this is my motto for everybody. Recovery isn't about being perfect, it's about progress, and everyone deserves a chance to heal. You're worthy of healing, you're worthy of support, you're worthy of a life that will make you feel whole again, and your past doesn't define you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I appreciate both of you sharing that. I want to give our listeners a chance to learn a little bit more about you. So I'll ask if folks wanted to follow up with Holon Health, where can they find you? And how might they be able to get involved if they want to share this type of care to other communities?
Yeah, so we are at holonhealth.com, HOLONHEALTH.com. You can find me and many of my colleagues also on LinkedIn. And we also have a Facebook group at Holon Health. You'll see it by the pink HH logo, which kind of stands out because it is hot pink. And we're still new. We've been doing this for just about 2 years now and are growing steadily, but take this to your community-based providers. And our goal is ultimately to help you support people in your communities, help solve for gaps in access to treatment and access to care and continuation of care, and provide services where there may be just a lack of availability of them. So in places where those are problems, we would love to bring our solutions. So please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate both you and your time today. Again, and I highlight your program, and it's wonderful success that you guys have had. You've explained a very beautiful relationship between your recovery coaches and those that are in recovery, and, a very goal-focused future that you are providing them, and, just the success to the program of all the stories that you've shared today. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, our listeners, for taking the time to join us. You can follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and more. We are all at Behavioral Health Today. And if you like our show, give us 5 stars and leave us a review. That helps our show get discovered and helps share the visible insights in each episode. As always, our resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today. We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.